and then the next one, and there were just hundreds of people would come. So my father was a Baptist, and he had thought, well, divine healing was all right, but it was for people that the doctors couldn't help. And I've got the doctors to help me. Well, then he got to the point there where the doctors couldn't help him anymore. And so he went to this meeting one Sunday afternoon, and he was prayed for. And he went back to, he was living in a hotel in Pasadena. He went back home and back to his hotel room, and he was laying in bed the next morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, and he felt a hand go through those adhesions, and he heard those adhesions break loose. And when he got up that day, he was well. And that was in.
So your father then was laying. This Venus, what is his name?
Finest Yoakum.
Finest Yoakum had laid hands and prayed, let him be healed from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. And then nothing really happened. He didn't feel anything happen then. So he went back to his motel, was in bed, and 4 o'clock in the morning, did you say?
He felt this. And he heard just pop. Heard the adhesions break loose. Well, his heart was healed, his nerves were healed, his lungs were healed, and he was a well man. So he went back to Texas, where the family had sort of divided us children among, there were 4 of us. I was 5 and my brother older, and then I had a little sister, a year and a half. And they had divided us up, and they were going to raise us. And so when he came back and said he was healed to a group of medical people in the family, they said he was crazy. And so they wanted Mother to just let him go back to California, and they would help her raise us without him. Well, she debated it, and then she thought, well, if the California climate can get him well, the California climate can keep him well. And so they moved out to California, and they went into church work, and were in church work. Both of them died here in Keokuk 50 years later.
Is that so? So they took your children then to California with them at that time, and so then you worked. Now, what kind of church work did they get involved in?
Anything they could do for the Lord. They in this work of the Pisgah work, there was not only the Pisgah home where they had the homeless people, but they had Pisgah Grandie where families went and lived in little cottages, and they had Pisgah Farm where they had a farm.
They could work too.
Yeah, some of the people could work and raise the vegetables that were used in the different places. They had the Pisgah Ark where unwed girls could go that were going to have a baby. And he had all of this. He spent his money just establishing all of these things.
So did your family live there, or you lived somewhere else?
We lived somewhere else, but Dad worked.
He worked with them.
Worked with them for a number of years, and then he just worked for the Lord. He pastored some. Mostly it was itinerant evangelistic work that he did. And he read the Bible. When he'd get a subject that he wanted to know the answer to, he'd read the Bible all the way through on that subject. And so he read the Bible through probably
many times.
Many times, yeah. Well, for 50 years, from the time he was healed until the time he passed away.
Until he passed away. And didn't you say that your mother was healed also?
Yes. Mother had uterine cancer, and 5 doctors said that she had to have an operation. At that time, a brother could operate on his sister, and so her brother was in Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania.
And he was a medical doctor.
He was a surgeon. He came to Houston, Texas to operate on my mother, and he was killed in an elevator accident. In those days, they didn't have doors, safety doors. And so Uncle Joe started to step on the elevator just as the boy had turned the elevator on, raised it, and so he stepped underneath the elevator, and then this boy got real excited, and he came down, and Uncle Joe was killed. So Mother's operation was postponed, and then Dad got sick. So after they went to California, then this Dr. Yoakum prayed for Mother. There's a real funny thing happened about that. Mother also had worn glasses since she was 8 years old, and at this time she was 38. And so for 30 years she'd worn glasses, and one eye was farsighted and one was nearsighted. And her brother, who was an eye specialist, said, you'll never be any different. You'll never be able to take them off. You'll always have to wear glasses. So when Dr. Yoakum prayed for Mother, he Lord, make this woman whole from the top of her head to the sole of her feet. He didn't know she had cancer, didn't know anything, and she didn't think about her eyes, but she couldn't see to get off the platform. And so she stood there, and he had taught him, said, now if the devil tries to bring it back onto you or anything, you just rebuke the devil. So she stood there on the platform, I rebuke the devil, I rebuke the devil. And she couldn't see to get off the platform. And finally she reached up and took her glasses off, and she could see perfectly.
Oh, my.
And 50 years later, when the day she died, she was with us in our home. And the day she died, she worked on quilts, and she threaded the sewing machine needle. 50 years later.
With no glasses?
With no glasses.
Oh, now that's a miracle, isn't it?
And her cancer was healed.
And her cancer. And see, back that far long ago, it would be probably a lot of people died of cancer. I mean, probably it would be very hard to...
A lot of them are today, too.
And a lot of them today, certainly. Right, absolutely. My goodness.
So because of this, the folks said, now the Lord has given us our life. And so we're going to turn it over to him. So they did live for the Lord, 100%. And they trusted the Lord for healing for, I think, Dad and Mother for 30 years. And we would be in school, and you fill out papers, who's your family doctor? We never had a family doctor. And we never got to stay home from school because of illness.
Because?
Disadvantage. If we were ill, they'd pray for us, and we'd get well and go back to school.
And then you just keep going. Yeah, that's remarkable.
I had a younger sister born during this time, and without medicine or without a doctor. There's, let's see, they called them trained nurse.
Like a midwife or something.
She was born at home.
So what happened then? So you grew up, and did you go to a Bible college, or?
Yes, after I grew up, I went to LIFE Bible College, and that's where I met Mr. Myers.
And where is that? LIFE?
That's in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, And he was a student there also, a Foursquare.
He was from Iowa, and I was from California.
And so you married, and...
Well, we didn't get married right away.
No.
He came back to Iowa after we graduated, and I did some church work in Nebraska, and then some in California. And so 8 years after we met again, and that's when we decided to get married.
What kind of church work were you doing in Nebraska and in California?
Assistant pastor, assistant in the church.
So were you preaching then?
Oh, yes.
Did you ever do any...
Assistant pastor usually preaches half of the time,
Did people do like sidewalk ministries at that time in California? Did you see that, or was there more of that going on?
Jail meetings, yes. Well, now sidewalk ministries, that's where Dad was real strong on when we were little kids. And he would travel and hold street meetings. And just a lot of people would be saved. And brush arbor meetings. Did you ever hear
what's a brush arbor meeting?
Well, brush arbor I think predates the tent. They'd make a frame and then cover it with brush, and that's called a brush arbor.
The brush just to keep the sun off or something?
Yeah. And people would come, they'd travel from California through the different states into Texas. Especially down in Texas, people would just come, big crowds of people would come. And
would they camp there then?
No,
or would they stay in? They would just come for the day or for the afternoon or whatever. And then you would have a lot of different, like a revival or something, have different pastors speak every night or every day or something. And so your father did some of that?
A lot of the preaching, I think I can safely say I've heard more sermons than any living person in the world, because if there was a service anywhere, we were there.
You were there.
And then Dad prayed for the sick a lot.
Did he?
Dad and Mother prayed for the sick. Yeah, people were really raised from the dead.
Really? Raised from the dead.
Yeah. There's a woman that was dead for 6 hours, and the folks were called, but they had been away, and when they came, the nurse was standing in the doorway with their hands over the door because the woman was dead. Well, they didn't know it, So Mother's just ducked in under the arm, and then she lowered her arm and let Dad come in too, and people were praying when she came back to life. And I saw her, I was just 7 years old at that time.
And you were with them?
Oh, well, they wouldn't let us come in. We were out in the car. But I saw her sister, this woman that died and was raised again that day. I saw her sister just maybe 10 years ago, and she was about my age at the time, her younger sister.
And she remembered that? And,
yes. And when this lady died, 44 years later, I think it was, my father had the funeral when this woman that was raised. They lived that much longer. And,
so that's a real miracle that you saw. I mean, that's another miracle that you saw. You've probably seen lots of miracles.
Well, they were
the
just
years.
almost commonplace. In our family, especially, we never thought of going to the doctor.
You didn't question God. You just believed and
prayed,
had faith.
And then praying for other people. That one boy was very ill. He was dying, and my father was called, and we were there and we prayed for him, and he lived. He got well, and so it was just almost commonplace.
Did a lot of people come to your house then for prayer for other things? Were there a lot of people coming to your home as a child, or was it more of you going?
Well, a lot of people lived in our home as I was a child. We never had just a home. It was Dad always had in mind a mission type, and so we'd have people sleeping in our front room and all over the house, and maybe there'd be 15 or 20 people at the table all of the time.
So your mom had to stretch the food dollar and do a lot of cooking, and you probably helped a lot with the cooking and cleaning and washing the sheets and all that.
Yeah, of course, these other people helped with their
and they helped too. So then, after all this work, so then you and Mr. Reverend Meyers got married. Where did you get married? In California?
No, we got married in Little Rock, Arkansas.
In Little Rock?
I came from California. He came from Iowa. And we were married in Little Rock, Arkansas. And
why Little Rock? Did you know?
Well, the man that I wanted to do the ceremony was going to be in Little Rock on an itinerary. And he was going to be there just 2 days. And so that's where we all...
So you just went, and did your families come there too?
Yes, they all came together there.
Nice.
And then we pastored in Tennessee. We pastored in Tennessee the first year. But it's just the Lord showed us to start it, to organize the corporation, incorporate. And we had stationery printed and envelopes, and that's all we had. We didn't have anything else. And it was just put in a drawer till the time came. Or when the Foursquare supervisor wrote and said, can you get somebody to buy the building, and then we'll move you and you can go into a bigger town. We wrote back in on our stationery and said, yes, we have a buyer, WRD, and so we purchased the building from Foursquare. So we bought this building for Foursquare, and then we bought it from Foursquare.
That's interesting, right.
But I think the Lord had his hand in all of these things in preparation for Christian television. And I never thought about it for a long time, but I was in California, and a friend of mine said, you know, if you had still been in an organization, they'd have never let you close the church and begin Christian television. They wouldn't let you do it.
No, I wouldn't think so.
And so it just kind of showed that the Lord had his hand on it.
So it's just like the Lord showed you to start Word, that corporation.
Yes.
You just got that inspiration.
Yes. Well, Mr. Myers
how did that come?
Mr. Myers got it in a dream. He's had a lot of guidance in a dream. And this WRD, World Outreach for Deliverance, was showed to him in a dream. Well, Foursquare First Bible College was LIFE, Lighthouse of International Foursquare Evangelism. That's the school we graduated from. And they were established another Bible college in the East. And so we thought, well, the Lord had showed him this for Foursquare. So when the supervisor was here, he said, I have a name for your school. And he told him, well, they weren't interested in it. So then we thought, well, the Lord has something else for it. And,
so was it only one dream? He dreamed at one time,
just one dream.
and was obedient to it then, and you know, witness to your spirit also that it was right, and that was what God wanted, and he went on.
A lot of guidance he has received in a dream. Our move over here, I've told this on Christian television before, but I guess maybe somebody wouldn't have heard it. We were ready to change churches. We had started the church in Newcastle, Indiana, and it was ready to leave. And at least in Foursquare, we just say, I want to move, and they say, well, okay, there's this place, and this place, and this place, and this place, and then then they switch the pastors. And so they gave us a number of places that we could choose from. But on the bottom of the letter, this letter was all typed real nice, but on the bottom of the letter was just written in pencil. There's also an empty church in Keokuk, I understand. Keokuk, Iowa, I understand. So we made a trip in the summertime, and we went and visited all of these churches. Most of them were in Iowa. One was in Wisconsin. One was in Illinois. And then on our way home, we came through Keokuk and got a room down here at the old Grand Hotel when it was in existence, and this was years ago. And came up and looked at the building, and the woodwork up around the organ was something Mr. Meyers had received in a dream of leading. And so he said, well, that's what I saw in my dream. That's where the Lord wants us to go. So when we made arrangements to buy the church for Foursquare and buy the house, which the Unitarian people
across the street?
Yeah.
Is it the house you have now?
To buy that ourselves. And we said, if we don't get both, we don't want either. But we got both, and so that's when we...
well, when did you start the printing business? You've done the printing business.
Well, in 60. At that time, we were having rallies in different places, and we had running a youth camp. We would rent Camp Kochi, and all of the independent or non-denominational churches would send their children to camp, and then we'd have rallies. And we needed some kind of an organ to keep everybody in touch with what was going on. And so, and Mr. Meyers got that in a dream too, the coordinator, the name, the coordinator. So we started printing that. And then through that, other people said, well, do our printing, and so.
But do you have like printing presses and all that? And so how did you learn to do that?
Well, we kind of learned on the job. I had done some printing before I was married, and but we kind of learned on the job. The salesmen that come and sell you supplies, they teach you a lot. And so this year, though, or this past year, we ended our printing.
You did end?
Yeah, we retired from the printing. And people come still. Somebody came yesterday and wanted some printing done. It's hard to tell people.
It's probably hard not to do it.
After you work 30 years to build up a business, then it's hard to tell them that you're not doing it anymore. But it was the time to quit.
To stop doing that, right. Well, and then, so it's kind of all history, isn't it? Once what you started in with the television. When did you get the idea for the television?
Well, that's a question so many people ask us. We didn't get the idea for television. We got the idea for Layman's Bible College. And we thought that there's so many people want to know the Bible, but they don't, they can't go away to Bible college. But we could have like 2 nights a week or 3 nights a week, and for a period of time and study, a couple subjects or 3 subjects. And so that's what we were going to do. Well, we knew that a town this size couldn't have the quality of professors that you'd need. And so we thought that this videotape, lessons on videotape, and that we'd use that. And so we bought a machine to use it and to do that, and we started looking for the tapes. And they wanted just to use them, $35 a piece. Well, we were figuring on using about 3 each night, 3 nights a week. You know, it was going to be
real expensive.
But we were still looking when a man came that we did printing for, and he lived in Chicago, and he came to see about some printing. And I said, well, look at Mr. Meyer's new toy in there. And he went and looked at the tape recorder, VCR, and he said, mine, he says, I like this. And he says, you know, you ought to know a friend of mine. He's got a whole warehouse of Christian tapes, and he doesn't charge anything. He lets people use them free of charge. Well, that's just what we wanted to hear. So this man says, I live in Chicago, and you come and visit me, and I'll take you in to see Dr. Giesland. And so we went and stayed at his house and visited him, and then he took us in. And Dr. Giesland had these tapes. See, before the satellites, people had to have Christian program on. You couldn't take it off a satellite. You had to play a tape. And so that's what he did. He had a bicycle, and he'd furnish Christian tapes to all these people that were putting Christian programming on television. But he said, you don't want to have a Bible school with just 4 walls and 40 people. Give it to the whole town. So that's where we got the idea. And he sat there in his office, and he picked up a telephone, and he called Cablevision in Keokuk. And he says, I'm going to come down and see about putting some Christian programming on your cable. And he said, do you have a place for it? And of course, he knew they had to. They have to have a public access channel. And they said yes. And so he says, well, I'll send somebody down. Well, they thought, man, in Chicago, it's not going to be much of a bother. But when we came, and we were lived only a few blocks from the cable office, then that was a different story. But that's the way it started. No, we didn't get the idea and work on it. It was the Lord did it.
Just like,
So I say the Lord just dropped it in our community, and that's why I know it's got to go on, because it's the Lord's project. And people say, well, it's the Myers project. It's not. We just happen to be here and working with it for now. But after we're gone, if the Lord tarries, then somebody else will carry it on, because it's the Lord's work.
Well, that's remarkable. I think we're running close to running out of time. But can you think, is there one miracle that's been the most just overwhelming miracle, something that's happened in your life that's just been just unbelievably wonderful?
Well, there's been several. Our daughter was run over when she was 3 years old, and there was a lot of miracles in connected with. She was given a dress for her birthday, and it had one of these big collars. You know, they used to have the big collars, and she was given a coat, and it had a big collar. And when she was run over and dragged under this car, the coat and the dress collar were both worn clear through before it started hurting her head. And in fact, she didn't wear anything that she had on. She never wore again except her shoes. Everything was just worn out from being
But those
dragged.
things protected her.
Protected her, yes. And she went to the hospital. We took her out to the hospital, and she came home the next day, and there wasn't any fracture on her head or anything. She was caught by her ear and dragged under the car, and then the wheel went over her leg, but her leg was bent, so it didn't break her leg. But then it pulled her off of the car bumper, pulled her off, and the next wheel would have gone right across her middle.
Oh my!
But somebody called for the man to stop, and he stopped. I mean, a man called for the woman that was driving to stop, and she stopped before that wheel went over.
So that was a miracle that she was truly saved.
That was
well, as our time is going away, but I want to ask, have you ever seen an angel? Have you ever knowingly seen an angel?
No.
Really supernatural?
I haven't seen an angel, and I haven't seen Jesus. My folks both saw Jesus, and I've wanted to all my life. But I did see the gates of heaven one time. There's the most glory. We were driving north of Love Field in Dallas, driving home real early one morning, and we were in the front seat, and our daughter was about 7 years old, and she was sitting between us. Our 3 sons were in the back seat, so there was a whole family. Everybody I loved the most was right there in that car. But I saw the gates of heaven. I'll tell you, the glory. If I had stayed there very long, I would have gone. I just would have gone. I had no thought of staying. That doesn't seem like you know, a mother should feel that way, but I had no thought of my husband. I had no thought of any of the children. It was just the glory transcended everything, and I just wanted to go. And I'll never be afraid to die, and nobody should be, that's a Christian should be afraid to die, because it's just a
so
going that's
How did that happen? You were just riding along, and all of a sudden you just saw
this vision over there. It was heaven. I didn't see Jesus, but I could see the gates of heaven and the glory. The glory just surrounded it.
And when you say glory, what is
just
light? Would it be a sparkling light?
No, it didn't seem sparkling, just intense white light. It was just glorious.
Remember the song, Heavenly Sunlight, Heavenly Floodlight, flooding my soul with glory divine? And I think of that, you know, people use the word glory, and sometimes I wonder if they really know what, you know, they're speaking of. But just that, because I've experienced glory once, a wonderful experience once, and it was like a sparkling light, what I experienced, and I consider that to be glory, and it's just the most wonderful thing. And I agree, I've always felt that I would never be afraid to die, that it's the most wonderful thing you can't even imagine.
It's just going. But just like I would have, I think if the vision had stayed there, I would have been gone. Somebody had said she'd had a heart attack, you know. But it was just, I just had the urge to, just to go. That's where I wanted to be. And,
well, with that wonderful word that heaven was where you wanted to be at that one time, I think we're out of time. Just really appreciate you, Mrs. Myers, all that you do for Keokuk and for Christvision, you and Reverend Myers. And thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.